A 19-year-old walked into a courtroom, alone and ignored by everyone around him. Seconds later, the same people laughing under their breath would freeze in disbelief after he revealed a truth no one was prepared for. What they thought was just another kid facing a small charge was actually the beginning of a moment that would shake the entire courthouse. The old stone building of Riverton Municipal Court felt heavier than usual. People whispered among themselves, waiting for the next case to begin. Some checked their phones. Some leaned back, bored. And some simply stared at the young man standing by the defense table, wondering why he looked so out of place. His name was Caleb Turner. Tall but slim. Quiet but visibly overwhelmed. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, his shoes worn down from months of walking everywhere instead of driving. He held a stack of papers clutched so tightly that the corners had bent. Anyone looking at him would have assumed he had no idea what he was doing. Behind the bench sat Judge Marion Hale, known across the county for her strict tone and razor-sharp expectations. She was respected, feared, and never late. If someone walked into her courtroom unprepared, she never let them forget it. And from the second she laid eyes on Caleb, her expression told everyone exactly what she thought. Another kid wasting her time. The courtroom doors closed, and the clerk called the case. Judge Hale adjusted her glasses and looked down at him. "Mr. Turner, you do understand that this court expects professionalism. You came alone. You brought no attorney. And your paperwork appears to be incomplete. Do you have an explanation for this?" A few people in the gallery snickered. Someone whispered, "He's done already." Another shook his head with a grin. Caleb swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand." His voice was soft, unsure, and while he tried to stand tall, anyone could see the nerves pressing on him like a weight on his chest. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. "Very well. Let us see what you believe you can accomplish today." From the start, everyone believed the outcome was already written. Caleb was representing himself in a dispute over a speeding citation, something small but stressful for someone his age. To the gallery, it looked like he barely knew why he was there. To the prosecution, it looked like an easy win. To the judge, it looked like another predictable moment. But Caleb knew something they didn't, and he had calmly prepared for this moment longer than anyone in that room could imagine. As he took a step forward, the gallery quieted. Not because they expected anything impressive, but because they were curious to see how bad this would go. Judge Hale tapped her pen. "Mr. Turner, if you are not ready to begin, I will end this now." Caleb lifted his head slowly and said, with a steady tone, "I am ready, Your Honor." The tension in the room tightened. Spectators leaned in without realizing it. The prosecutor, a confident man named David Lorne, smirked at Caleb with the ease of someone who expected victory handed to him. Caleb started speaking, explaining the events that led to the disputed ticket. But instead of stumbling through his story like everyone expected, he began laying out every detail with calm precision. He described the road layout, the weather, the traffic pattern, and even the angle of the officer's vehicle. He spoke as if he had memorized every second of that day. People in the gallery stopped whispering. Judge Hale lowered her pen. Even the prosecutor's smile faded. Then Caleb continued. He reached into his folder and pulled out a neatly drawn diagram showing the officer's position, the angle of the radar gun, and the distances involved. It wasn't professionally printed, but it was accurate and carefully crafted. "My speed could not have been measured correctly based on the officer's position," Caleb said. "And under state law, evidence gathered improperly cannot be accepted." Judge Hale raised an eyebrow. It was the first sign that something unexpected was happening. She had handled hundreds of minor cases, yet very few defendants came prepared with clear references, citations, and structured analysis. "Mr. Turner," she said slowly, "are you attempting to challenge the accuracy of the radar reading on the basis of placement and calibration?" Yes, Your Honor. Because the tools used must meet accuracy standards. And I would like the prosecution to confirm whether the radar was properly calibrated before my stop. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't expected this. He tried to recover his confidence. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The citation stands regardless of his interpretation. Caleb lifted a hand slightly, asking to continue. Judge Hale allowed it. Your Honor, the law does not rely on assumptions. It requires verified proof. Without calibration records, the reading cannot be considered reliable. Murmurs spread through the room. The same people who mocked him earlier now leaned forward with new interest. Judge Hale glanced between Caleb and the prosecutor. For the first time, she looked unsure. Mr. Turner, she asked, where did you learn to understand these procedures so well? Caleb hesitated. The room waited for his answer. I've been studying law since I was 14, Your Honor. I completed the bar exam last year. The entire courtroom shifted. Gasps echoed. People turned to each other in disbelief. Even Judge Hale froze, stunned. You are telling this court that you are a licensed attorney at 19. Yes, Your Honor, Caleb replied calmly. And I am prepared to present more evidence if needed. What began as a simple case suddenly transformed into a moment none of them would forget. And this was only the beginning. Caleb's words hung in the air long enough for the silence to turn heavy. People who had judged him the moment he walked in now stared at him with wide, confused eyes. Judge Hale leaned forward, her expression shifting from annoyance to something closer to disbelief. You passed the bar at 18, she asked, her voice quieter than before. Yes, Your Honor. A ripple moved across the gallery. Some people whispered in shock. Others stared at Caleb as if seeing him for the first time. Even Prosecutor Lorne, normally unshakable, looked shaken for a moment before he tried hiding it behind a stiff posture. This shift in the room didn't make Caleb arrogant. If anything, he took a slow breath as if grounding himself again. He knew winning respect was never as simple as surprising people. He still had a case to argue, and the courtroom's mood was far from stable. Judge Hale folded her hands slowly. Proceed, Mr. Turner. Caleb nodded and continued building his argument. He spoke with calm confidence that didn't feel rehearsed or dramatic. It felt earned, like he had grown into the knowledge through years of quiet dedication. He walked the court through the inconsistencies in the officer's report. He pointed out differences in the listed time of the stop and the actual time shown on the officer's dashboard. He identified conflicting descriptions of the road conditions. Every detail landed with more weight than the last. People in the gallery exchanged looks, almost startled by how thorough he was. Minutes earlier, he had been a kid no one took seriously. Now he was dismantling the case with clarity and patience, without raising his voice once. Prosecutor Lorne tried interrupting. Your Honor, this is unnecessary. The citation is valid regardless of these minor points. Judge Hale held up a hand, stopping him. Counselor, the defense is presenting legitimate concerns. Let him finish. Her tone carried something new, respect mixed with curiosity. Caleb turned back to the table and pulled out another sheet of paper. This one showed a comparison of case law he had studied, with brief explanations written in clean, careful handwriting. These cases support my position. Each one establishes that when evidence lacks verification or contains inconsistencies, it cannot be used to uphold a charge. Judge Hale examined the page closely. Her usual stern look gave way to a contemplative one. Mr. Turner, she said, you have cited precedent accurately. Continue. Every sentence drew the courtroom deeper into the moment. What started as a simple traffic hearing now felt like a rare unfolding event, something people would talk about long after it ended. Caleb turned toward the prosecution side. I would like to request any documentation showing the radar gun's calibration before my stop. Without it, the reading is unverified. Lorne stiffened. We do not have that record with us today, Your Honor. But the officer follows standard procedure. Caleb shook his head gently. Standard procedure is not a substitute for proof. The law requires verification, not assumption. That line hit the room like a quiet strike. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. Judge Hale tilted her head slightly as if impressed against her will. Mr. Lorne, can you provide the requested documentation at this time? The prosecutor hesitated. No, Your Honor. The judge looked back to Caleb. Continue. Caleb stepped forward again. His hands no longer trembled. His voice no longer wavered. Something had shifted. Not just in the courtroom, but inside him. He no longer looked like the anxious young man who walked in. He looked like someone who finally belonged. The evidence being used against me is not only incomplete, he said, but unreliable under the standards required by law. Without proper verification, this citation cannot stand. The gallery was silent now. Every breath felt suspended. Every eye focused on him. Judge Hale tapped her pen lightly, but not in impatience this time. More like thoughtfulness. And what do you propose, Mr. Turner? Caleb lifted a document from the stack. I am submitting a motion to dismiss the charge based on the deficiencies presented. The facts of this case fall short of the requirements needed for the citation to proceed. The judge took the motion and read through it carefully. Her eyes moved slowly down the pages. The longer she read, the more the atmosphere tightened. People leaned in. The prosecutor's jaw tightened. Caleb stood still, waiting. Finally, the judge placed the papers down and looked up at him with an expression no one in the courtroom had ever seen from her. This motion is exceptionally well written, she said. Far better than what I have seen from many first-year attorneys. A wave of murmurs spread all over the room. Some people nodded. Others stared with open awe. Prosecutor Lorne tried one last time. Your Honor, surely we cannot dismiss a citation on technical interpretations. The defense is stretching. Sit down, Counselor, Judge Hale said, her voice firm enough to silence the entire room. She turned back to Caleb. You have demonstrated a clear understanding of the law, Mr. Turner. You have shown preparation, accuracy, and respect for the process. More importantly, you have reminded this court of the standards we must uphold. Another silence followed. A deep one, the kind that makes hearts beat faster. Then Judge Hale spoke the words that changed everything. I grant your motion. The charge is dismissed. For a moment, the gallery didn't react. It was too stunned. Then a slow sound of applause began at the back, growing louder until half the room was standing. Caleb stood there quietly, his face showing relief mixed with disbelief. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't tried to impress anyone. He had simply done the work. Judge Hale stood from the bench and prepared to leave. But before stepping down, she paused beside him. You have a rare gift, Mr. Turner. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Caleb nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. As he gathered his papers, he didn't realize the world outside the courtroom was waiting. And what happened next would take his life in a direction he never expected. Caleb stepped out of the courtroom expecting the world to quiet down again. But instead of calm, he walked straight into a wave of voices, flashing lights, and cameras turning toward him as if drawn by a magnet. A group of reporters who had been waiting for unrelated cases suddenly recognized him. Someone shouted his name. Another raised a microphone so quickly that Caleb flinched. Caleb Turner, is it true you passed the bar at 18? Did you know the judge would dismiss the case? How did you prepare for all of this? The questions came from every direction. People stepped closer, pressing in on him as if they couldn't believe the same young man they had watched walk past them earlier was the one who had stunned a courtroom minutes ago. Caleb raised a hand gently, not to silence them, but to steady the moment. He took a breath and answered in a calm voice. "I came here like anyone else. I wanted fairness. That's all." His words were simple, but they carried weight. Reporters exchanged glances, realizing there was more to him than a headline or a surprising moment in court. The cameras kept flashing. People kept asking. But Caleb didn't rush. He didn't show off. He didn't act like someone who had just gone viral in the span of half an hour. He looked like a young man who had fought hard for something and finally let himself breathe. Within hours, the clip of his courtroom argument made its way online. People shared it at lightning speed. Some posted it with praise. Others debated it. By evening, millions of views had spread across social platforms, and Caleb's name was suddenly everywhere. Some comments called him brilliant. Some said he embarrassed the prosecutor. Some said the judge needed that wake-up call. And some questioned whether it was real at all. But while the world argued over his story, Caleb went home quietly, unaware of how far his name had already traveled. At home, in a small living room filled with mismatched furniture and old family photos, his mother waited. Her name was Sarah Turner, a woman who had held their small family together through years that were anything but easy. She had the news playing on the TV, and when Caleb walked in, she turned toward him with eyes full of emotion. "You did it," she said softly. Caleb didn't know if she meant the case or the courage to stand in a room full of doubtful eyes. Maybe both. She wrapped her arms around him and held him close. "You were steady out there," she whispered. "You didn't let them shake you." Caleb hugged her back, feeling the pressure of everything he had carried for years slowly lift. Their moment was interrupted by Sarah's phone buzzing non-stop on the couch. Family members, neighbors, people from the community. Everyone wanted to talk to her. To congratulate her. To ask about her son who had suddenly become a symbol of brilliance breaking through assumptions. Caleb exhaled, overwhelmed but grateful. The days that followed were a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. Law firms reached out, some offering internships, others wanting to have a conversation. Advocacy groups praised his calm strength. Podcasts wanted to interview him. Schools wanted him to speak to students. But along with the praise came doubt. Some people claimed he only got lucky. Some said the case was too small to matter. Some refused to believe he had passed the bar young, insisting it must be exaggerated. Others questioned why a person with his ability was walking around in worn-out shoes and taking the bus to court. Caleb didn't engage in the noise. He focused on what mattered, what this moment meant and what he wanted to do next. Meanwhile, Judge Hale faced her own spotlight. People questioned her harshness at the beginning of the hearing. Some criticized her. Others defended her. But she addressed it directly in a rare interview. "That young man reminded me why this job is more than rulings and procedures," she said. "He made me realize how easily assumptions cloud judgment. I'm grateful I had the chance to see past mine." Her honesty only added more depth to the story spreading across the country. While the world continued talking, Caleb kept studying. Not because he needed to prove anything, but because it was who he was. Curious. Persistent. Quietly driven. He didn't realize that the same moment people were praising as extraordinary was simply another step in a journey he had been building for years. And as he prepared for what came next, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: certainty. The certainty that he could use his experience not just to defend himself, but to push for something bigger. Something that reached far beyond a dismissed citation or a headline on a screen. Right when he started planning his next moves, another unexpected challenge appeared. Something that would test him in ways the courtroom never had. Opportunities kept appearing, But so did pressure. Caleb soon realized that attention came with expectations he never asked for. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. Some smiled. Some pointed. Some walked up and said they had seen the video and felt inspired. He appreciated every kind word, but each one added a weight he didn't show on the outside. One evening, as he sat at the kitchen table reviewing a stack of books and notes, Sarah watched him quietly. "You're carrying too much," she said gently. "You don't have to respond to everyone. You don't have to be everything they want you to be." Caleb set his pen down. "I just don't want to waste the moment. People are listening now." "They're listening because of who you already are," she said. "You don't need to become someone new." He nodded, but the tension in his shoulders didn't fully ease. And then came the message that changed everything. A nearby community center reached out, asking if he would speak to a group of teenagers. Most of them came from neighborhoods where chances were rare and encouragement even rarer. They wanted Caleb to talk about perseverance, judgment, and facing obstacles, even when no one believes in you. He hesitated at first. Court arguments were one thing. Sharing personal struggles was another. But he also knew exactly what it felt like to be young, underestimated, and drowning in expectations you never asked for. He accepted. When the day arrived, the room filled fast. Not because Caleb was famous, but because word had spread that someone young, someone who looked like them and lived what they lived, was coming to speak. Caleb stepped to the front, feeling the same nervous flutter he felt before facing Judge Hale. He took a breath. "I didn't walk into that courtroom to prove someone wrong," he began. "I walked in because I refused to give up on myself." The room went still. He told them how he used old textbooks from a library because he couldn't afford new ones. How he studied late at night while working part-time to help pay bills. How he felt out of place in rooms where people doubted him before he even spoke. A boy in the front row raised his hand. "How did you keep going when people made fun of you or didn't believe you?" Caleb paused, remembering the quiet pain of those moments. "I kept going because I knew stopping wouldn't make anything better. I wasn't trying to impress them. I was trying to build myself." The boy nodded slowly, absorbing every word. Caleb spoke for nearly an hour. Not from a place of authority, but from honesty. He talked about fear, frustration, long nights, and the loneliness of chasing goals that no one else sees for you. By the time he finished, the room erupted with applause. But this applause felt different. It wasn't excitement for a viral moment. It was gratitude. People saw themselves in his struggle. When the crowd dispersed, a girl stayed behind. She walked up to Caleb, holding a notebook against her chest. "Everyone always tells me I'm not smart enough," she said quietly. "But after today, I want to try again. I want to believe I can do something real." Her voice shook as she spoke. Caleb felt something shift inside him, something deeper than anything that had happened in court. "You don't need anyone's permission to be capable," he told her. "Start where you are. Keep pushing. You'll surprise them." She nodded, then smiled for the first time that day. After the event, Caleb walked home feeling lighter than he had in weeks. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about the courtroom or the video or the comments online. He was thinking about the faces in that room and the hope he saw in their eyes. But life doesn't pause when hope appears. The world keeps moving, and so did his story. Because just as Caleb found his footing, something deeper began to surface. Conversations spreading across the city, debates forming, questions rising about the way justice was handled not just in his case, but in many others. People wanted change. Advocates wanted support. Communities wanted someone they could trust to speak. And all eyes kept turning back to Caleb, even as he tried to stay grounded. He knew he had a choice to make. Stay quiet and return to a normal life, or step forward into something larger, something that could affect far more people than he ever imagined. The next challenge arrived sooner than he expected. A call came in late one night, and the voice on the other end would push him into a new test, one that demanded more strength, more courage, and more clarity than any courtroom argument ever had. Caleb answered the late-night call with a tired voice, expecting it to be a wrong number or another interview request he planned to decline. But the moment he heard the caller's tone, his posture straightened. It was a local community advocate named Mr. Harris, someone known for fighting quietly but fiercely for fairness in cases that rarely made the news. He didn't sound excited. He didn't sound curious. He sounded worried. "Caleb, I'm calling because we need help," he said. "There's a case involving a young boy named Jordan, 14 years old. He's being charged with something he didn't do, and no one is listening. His family has no money for representation. The hearing is tomorrow morning." Caleb's breath caught. He had never been asked to help in someone else's case like this. He wasn't sure if he was ready. But he also remembered what it felt like to stand alone in a courtroom while people judged him before he had a chance to speak. "What exactly happened?" Caleb asked. "The evidence is thin. The officer's report has holes. But the prosecution is pushing hard. If someone doesn't stand with him, he's going to walk into that courtroom with no support and no chance." Caleb closed his eyes for a moment. The story felt painfully familiar. Different details, same pattern. He didn't need more explanation. "I'll be there," he said. When he hung up, Sarah stood at the doorway. She had heard enough to understand. "You don't owe anyone anything," she reminded him softly. "I know," Caleb replied. "But this boy deserves someone who believes him." Morning arrived quickly. Caleb walked into the courthouse with a steady stride. Not with the weight of proving himself, but with a purpose that felt even bigger. The waiting area outside the courtroom was nearly empty except for a woman sitting with her hands clasped tight, her fear plain as day. Beside her was a boy who looked far too young to be facing something so serious. That must have been Jordan. The moment Caleb approached, the mother looked up with tears in her eyes. "You're Caleb," she whispered, unable to hide her shock. "People said you might come, but I didn't want to hope too much." Caleb nodded warmly. "We're going to get through this. You're not alone." Jordan stared at him for a long moment. "You're the guy from the video," he said quietly. "You beat the case everyone said you'd lose." Caleb crouched down to meet him at eye level. "I didn't beat it because I was special," he said. "I beat it because the truth was stronger than the doubt in the room. That's what we're going to focus on today." Jordan nodded, though his hands shook slightly. Inside the courtroom, the mood was tense. The prosecutor handling the case looked confident, as if the hearing was already decided. Jordan's files were thin. The evidence presented against him looked rushed, and the officer's testimony contained gaps obvious enough to raise questions. Caleb felt the familiar pressure building in the room. People didn't know him here. No one expected him to speak. He didn't have a title or a suit or a legal team behind him. But he stepped forward anyway. "Your Honor," he began, "I would like to speak on behalf of the defendant." The judge, an older man with tired eyes, looked him over. "And you are?" "My name is Caleb Turner. I am a licensed attorney. I'm here to assist this family at their request." The prosecutor scoffed. "We don't need outside interference. The mother should have arranged proper counsel if she wanted it." Caleb didn't raise his voice. He didn't get flustered. He simply replied, "A teenager's future is at stake. I believe that deserves accuracy, not convenience." The gallery stirred. Even the judge sat up straighter. "What exactly are you challenging, Mr. Turner?" Caleb walked through the evidence piece by piece. The inconsistencies in the report. The conflicting times. The lack of reliable witness accounts. The absence of any real verification tying the boy to the accusation. He spoke with the same patience and clarity he used in his own case, but this time something was different. He wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting so a child wouldn't be crushed under the weight of a system stacked against him. The prosecutor became visibly irritated. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "This case is simple." "No," Caleb said softly. "This case is rushed." That single line shifted the entire room. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Turner, continue." Caleb presented the final point, an overlooked detail in the officer's statement that contradicted the entire basis of the charge. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was enough to unravel the prosecution's claim completely. Silence filled the courtroom once again. The judge let out a long breath before speaking. "I see no grounds for this charge to proceed. This case is dismissed." Jordan's mother covered her mouth as relief broke through her fear. The prosecutor lowered his head, defeated. And Jordan turned toward Caleb with eyes filled not just with gratitude, but something deeper, hope. When they stepped outside into the sunlight, the mother hugged Caleb tightly. "You didn't even know us," she said. "But you came anyway." Caleb smiled gently. No one should face a room like that alone. Word of what happened spread quickly, not with the chaotic noise of viral fame, but with genuine admiration. People across the city began seeing Caleb not just as the young man who shocked a courtroom, but as someone willing to stand up when others stayed silent. Over the next months, he continued helping quietly, studying cases, mentoring students, speaking to communities, and offering support where he could. He didn't chase attention. He focused on impact. And with each step, he built something stronger than public praise. He built trust. He built purpose. He built a path that reached far beyond a dismissed ticket or a headline. His journey became a reminder that being underestimated doesn't define you. It tests you, refines you, and reveals strength you might not know you have. And while Caleb never sought recognition, his story became a flicker of courage for anyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. Because he proved something powerful. It doesn't matter how you walk into the room. What matters is what you stand for when you're finally given the chance to speak.